This tutorial describes an overview of French political society and culture. Um, of course, France is a large continental European country, has been a leading economic and technological power on that continent. And of course, if we go far enough back in history, it's been a dominant colonial power and so on. Demographically, we can talk about a strongly Catholic country, though most of the membership in the Catholic Church are at this point unobservant. But at least that's the demographic that's dominating. With a rising minority of Muslims, today about 8%. So the situation, the geographical location, of course, also of France has always influenced its politics. The United Kingdom cannot easily be invaded because, of course, it's a set of islands in the Atlantic. France, however, with its land borders, has not had that situation, and of course, historically, many wars against Germany and so on. So this is just one aspect of being a continental European country, and as such, it has the geographic location of the country has always had a great deal of impact on its politics. Let's start with just thinking about French civil society and the relationship of the civil society to the state. Now, first of all, we have to realize that the strength of the French state has meant that the networks within the French state has been very much dirigist networks. So there has been a strong faith in expert opinion, where the civil servants in the senior management levels of the bureaucracy, of the public administration, have been defined as the experts. So there's been a very strong centralized top-down structure of decision-making, which also has involved some groupthink, of course, because of the anarchs, the les grandes écoles, the interlinked networking that has resulted from the strong position of alumni from these particular select schools. As a result, the grassroots in France have been small, rarely coordinated. Unions are active, but weak and fragmented. And you've had a situation with a great deal of strikes and demonstrations and rallies. And one of the reasons for the number of strikes and demonstrations and rallies is precisely because civil society groups, NGOs, unions, others have not have access to the top levels of government where decision making is being done. There's been no real possibility of engaging in dialogue, and when that is absent, you have to engage in other methods to put pressure on government. So with no other tools for influencing the political agenda, these groups have turned to such type of actions that can be very visible in public space. So let's have a look at this iron triangle. So this is the result of the anarchs, effectively. All of these have gone through the same schools. You start out as a civil servant, you reach a higher level within the bureaucracy, the national bureaucracy, and then you can leave to become a party politician or a big business leader, or you just circulate between these three. And that creates this iron triangle consisting of these three corners of the triangle. Very strong force to be reckoned with in French politics. Discussing the civic culture of France. So if you look at the video about French history, you know that the French regimes have been historically quite weak, and the French have, of course, not hesitated to question the regime, and done so much more frequently than have the British or the Americans. One interesting turning point in these old divisions was the events of May 1968. It was a turning point in legitimizing the Fifth Republic. This consisted of a series of student protests, massive waves of strikes and demonstrations. But it differed from past protest movements because the enemy was the state, the enemy, the adversary was the state. But even as it was, no one really questioned the legitimacy of the Fifth Republic, of the regime as such. There was a great deal of advocacy for policy change, but no advocacy for tearing up the Republic, which previously had been much more common. So if we look at the civic culture in France, by the mid-70s, you can track the value indicators, and you would find that the French were more similar to British and Americans. And of course, then you had the electoral success of the socialists in the 81, where where the system proved that it was actually possible to have a peaceful transition between the Gaullists and the socialists, with the Fifth Republic could manage that in a smooth manner, which legitimized the opposition and also legitimized the Republic. So the regime was also, it was an important test for the regime, which it withstood. Nowadays, we can talk about new divisions in French politics, one of these being race and ethnicity. Many immigrants and their French-born children have not assimilated, and the state has proven incapable of providing an arena for integration between the French mainstream population, the dominant French population, and the minorities. And the traditionalists and nationalists have turned to populist and nationalist rhetorics that, in many cases, paint immigrants as and immigration as a social problem. On the other hand, you've also had violent protests in the suburbs, the 2005 being maybe the most flagrant ones, when North African and other youths burned cars around the country after teenagers were killed by the police. So right now there is this quite central cleavage between the dominant French population and immigrants and so on in politics. And you can see this in the politics of headscarves, which has become a contentious issue in public space, because on the one hand, France guarantees individual rights to everyone. It's a secular government. It has centralization and egalitarian ideas, of course, drawing back to the French Revolution with freedom and democracy and so on. Now, what has happened is that the secularism and individual rights have become dichotomized and politicized by the ban of conspicuous religious symbols in public schools. The idea being that France is a secular country where there should be no conspicuous religious symbols in schools. However, conspicuous is defined in such a way that it's really directed towards wearing of headscarves. So if you wear a small cross, for instance, as a necklace, that has not been banned, which means effectively that some religious groups have more rights to display their religious symbols in schools than others do. And of course, this will trigger a reaction from the minorities who can't display their religious symbols in schools because they want to have equal rights for everyone. So this has become quite a contentious issue and quite a divisive one. And of course, the former President Sarkozy talked about how multiculturalism has failed. Problem is that France never had multiculturalism as a policy set. So this assertion is difficult to substantiate against the backdrop of the background of the politics that has actually happened in France. Final note here on women in politics. The parity law was introduced as an amendment to increase gender equality and requiring parties to run equal numbers male and female candidates in proportional elections, but the national level elections are not proportional elections, so it doesn't apply to those. And on those sub-national elections, women tend to be buried at the bottom of the list. So you still have a situation in which only 90% of the National Assembly is female, and so it's really impossible to question to what extent the parity law has actually contributed to an increase in gender equality in politics. And that summarizes a discussion on France's political society and culture. Hope you found it useful.